Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is DreamFiction and today we will be reading the story Issei, the True Dragon of the Apocalypse, translated into English by Jyanzein. I would never have guessed that the bearer of the Welsh dragon belonged to the demons. Zenobia commented as they were resting even in the created dimension, along with Irina. It's a long story, Issei replied. He was sitting on the grass along with the exorcists as he waited for them and Kiba to recover. Looking back on it now, I guess it wasn't so bad talking to you guys. Zenobia's comment made everyone look at her in mild astonishment. If you're with the Securuite, it means your chances of winning weren't as imaginary as I thought. Don't try to deflect the topic. Kiba. All of his teammates exclaimed, seeing that he had finally woken up. You guys lost. Hold up your end of the bargain and hand over the swords to me. Kiba commented with a certain coldness in his words. How, Irina exclaimed, completely startled. We shouldn't have been so confident, Zenobia. Her companion reprimanded, causing Zenobia to lower her head. She was clearly sorry that she had let herself get carried away with her apparent superiority. I'm sorry, Irina. Zenobia apologized, looking away. They all look too weak, the exorcist fixed her gaze on Issei. I didn't imagine that the weakest of them could manage to multiply their levels in such an absurd way. Zenobia withdrew the sword from her back, intending to hand it to Issei. Issei stared at the sword for a few seconds, thinking carefully. I was the one who won, so that means I get to decide what the deal will be, doesn't it? Issei asked, receiving a look of intrigue from Zenobia. Well, yes, that's what we had agreed on. But weren't you both looking for the same thing? She asked, looking at Kiba. The blonde looked at Issei, clenching his fist slightly for obvious reasons. On second thought, I'd like to make another kind of deal. Kiba tried to get up to interrupt him, but was stopped by Kaneko. This is not the time for you to get carried away with your emotions, Kiba. The albino reprimanded him, causing Kiba to only grit his teeth. What kind of deal? Zenobia asked with clear interest in the subject. You can keep the swords. He commented, a sly smile beginning to appear on his face. But they must fight alongside us to stop Kakabiel. What? Absolutely everyone shouted, without exception. Issei, it's absurd for the followers of God and demons to fight together. Akeno exclaimed in a very disapproving tone. Do you know what that means? What's wrong with that? Issei asked with an innocent smile on his face. We accept. The demons looked at Zenobia with great surprise. A deal is a deal. He said simply. And Blondie. She mentioned, causing Kiba to look at her coldly. When this is all over, you can do whatever you want with the Excalibur shards. Hearing this, the blonde blinked in surprise. A sword that has caused so many people to suffer does not deserve to bear the title of Holy Sword. She concluded, rising to her feet. Hey. Irina squatted down at a frighteningly fast speed towards Issei, causing him to panic. Why are you agreeing to help some exorcists? I don't want anyone to die. Issei commented, flustered by the sudden approach. The two exorcists were visibly surprised by his response. Not even us? Irina asked, a cheerful gleam in her eyes. Of course not. Issei replied seriously. That's why I invited them to form a temporary team. I know there are differences between us, but we all seek the same goal. And what is that goal? Zenobia asked, looking over her shoulders at him. Not to let innocent people die for this. Issei stated with great seriousness. The decisiveness and firmness in his words made the two exorcists stare at him for a short second. Let's go now, Irina. Zenobia commented, looking straight ahead. Yeah, replied Irina, jumping to her feet. I'll see you tomorrow at the academy after school to make plans. Zenobia commented. Both women started to leave, but before they left, Zenobia gave Issei one last look. I almost forgot. Securuite, I have a message for you. Hearing this, Issei watched her with great intrigue. The hacker Yuiku has already awakened. After hearing that name, Issei could feel every inch of her skin bristle all over. He didn't know why, but just hearing that made his entire body go into a deep shiver that seemed to have no end. Issei didn't understand why he had reacted like that, but if he could be sure of one thing. That reaction couldn't indicate anything good. Line jump. Join the exorcists. Rhea stares at them, thinking calmly. I think that's not a very bad idea. At least just this once. Declared the president, observing all her servants. The only ones not on site were Kiba and Issei. We need all the help we can get to stop Kakabiel, and only someone with a very bad temper wouldn't accept help. She finished with a smile as she saw that things were turning out better than she expected. How do you plan to use them? Asia asked curiously. From what I was informed, they are much stronger than Kiba. Therefore, they would serve on the front line. Rhea narrowed his eyes somewhat darkly. That way, if anyone dies, it will be them and not us. Rhea's, I have a doubt. Kaneko commented, with her typical neutrality. I hear you. How do we know we'll be enough to defeat Kakabiel? From what I understand, his power is much higher than Razor. The albino commented, making it clear that they did not know the potential of a cadre. In Kakabiel's case, he is known to be the weakest cadre. That doesn't mean it won't be a problem, but I think all of us together and with Haidu's help, it will be a piece of cake. Riaz sorted through his papers, giving them all one last look. If things get complicated, Sona will take care of calling my brother and Siraful. Obviously, I wouldn't want to go that far because I'd like to prove to Surziches that my nobility is powerful enough to enter the raiding games, despite not being complete. Of course, I hadn't thought of that last one, Akeno clarified, ducking his head. It's a perfect opportunity for you to rise above the other demons of your generation. That's right. Riaz nodded, with an ambitious smile. I want to prove to the demon world that I am far better than my cousin. But, for them to accept those terms, you'll need a ridiculously strong servant. Kaneko made her point, taking a sweet. Speaking of which, Riaz raised his gaze, denoting great intrigue. Where's Issei? The three women looked at each other seriously, then turned their gaze to their mistress. We think the matter may be a bit delicate. Riaz blinked expectantly after listening to Akeno, waiting for the answer. Line jump. Concentrating a large amount of magic without using a magic circle is very tricky. Don't bother if you don't even get it in a few months. Tiamat commented, studying with her gaze as Issei was trying to release all his magical reserves in his hand, but he was barely carrying a small violet orb that was barely visible. Personally, it took me over 4 months to be able to perfect the attack I demonstrated to you earlier. Seconds passed, and he got no response from Issei, which she found very strange. She looked up to see that Issei's face seemed to be different than usual. He seemed to be very worried about something. Obviously, this was something Tiamat wasn't going to let go of, being someone so important to her. Hey, Issei, are you listening to me? Tiamat asked, standing up and passing her hand in front of his eyes, causing Issei to wake up. Oh. The protagonist exclaimed, destroying what little concentration he had, causing the small robe to disappear from his hands. I'm sorry, he apologized, looking away. It's just that I heard something. Hearing this, Tiamat quickly sat down in front of him. What's troubling you? She asked, hoping she could help him. Yes, Issei rubbed his hair, giving a big sigh. It's the hacker Yuku, he's already woken up. And, I honestly don't know what to think. Drake has always told me that all the bearers end up killing each other. The battle to the death between them is fated. Issei looked Tiamat in the eye, denoting great uncertainty in his gaze. Being one of the two bearers, I suppose my fight against him won't take too long to happen. Are you afraid? Tiamat's question made Issei's eyes widen beyond belief. Afraid? He wondered aloud to himself. Yes. Tiamat replied. Fear of dying. Issei rubbed his hair as he thought carefully about the question. I think so, Issei lowered his gaze, a depressing smile on his face. I'm a coward, aren't I? Tiamat looked at him for a short second without saying a word until finally a smile appeared on her face. She rested her hand on Issei's shoulder, giving it a small comforting squeeze, causing the young man to look at her with great surprise. That's not true. The dragoness declared with great conviction. Being afraid of death doesn't make you a coward, it makes you someone. It makes me someone? Issei asked, not quite understanding what she was referring to. Tiamat brought her hand to Issei's cheek. It makes you someone because you can feel. Tiamat used her free hand to bring Issei's hand to her chest, making him able to feel her heartbeat. Do you feel it? The dragoness asked. Issei couldn't help but avert his gaze with a small blush, but he was still able to answer. Yes. Now, tell me this time, Tiamat brought Issei's hand to his chest, entwining her hand with his so that they could both feel the heartbeat. Do you feel anything? After the question, Issei couldn't help but look up at her to answer her. At that moment, it was when he could notice the small blush that accompanied her cute smile. Her light blue eyes were shining with an uncharacteristic intensity. It only made her look more and more beautiful. In fact, the impact was so great for Issei that all sound became inaudible, accompanied by absolute darkness. All she could see and hear was Tiamat's beautiful figure, along with the beating of her heart. Suddenly, the voices of his friends Mitsuda and Motohama began to be heard in his mind, only to be followed by the voices of his precious club mates. I can feel it, Issei replied, with a smile. I know why I'm afraid of dying. I wouldn't like to forget my best friends, I wouldn't like to forget my mates, I wouldn't like to forget my mistress. Issei would fix his gaze on Tiamat's face, causing her to blink with intrigue. But above all things, I would not like to forget you. Issei would give her a tight hug, causing a large blush to shoot across Tiamat's face at his action and his cute words. Even so, she didn't take long to respond to him, showing him how fond she was of him with a single hug. I can feel, thanks to you. I wouldn't want to forget you for anything in the world either. She would cling even tighter to the embrace, sinking her face into Issei's neck. And I wouldn't want to lose you for anything in the world either. That's why I'll protect you as often as it takes. That will be so, only until I become stronger than you. Issei commented with some amusement, drawing a small chuckle from Tiamat. The dragoness broke away from Issei slightly to look him in the eyes. Still not giving up, huh? I'm not going to. Issei exclaimed with a toothy grin. It'll be hilarious when he finds out I'm one of the 4 Dragon Kings, Tiamat thought. Well, shall we get back to training? Issei asked with renewed energy. No. Tiamat replied, separating herself completely from Issei. This caused the chestnut to look at her with confusion. Being afraid is fine. What's not fine is letting yourself be controlled by fear. Declared the dragoness more seriously than usual. At least for today, we will be doing special training. Special training? Issei asked with slight enthusiasm, though it was quickly overshadowed by a growing terror as she watched a large, icy, terrifying aura begin to surround Tiamat. That's right. Tiamat would cross her arms just as a grim look graced her face. Special training to control your fear. Several hours later. Tiamat would appear in Issei's room via celestial magic circle, laying the brown-haired man down on his bed. You could clearly see how Issei's soul wanted to leave his body at all costs. I think I've gone too far. Tiamat would rub her hair, seeing how Issei was feeling. Just as he was about to leave, she gave him one last look. Her eyes glowed warmly and she proceeded to cover him. See you? She said softly, giving him a small kiss on the forehead. Line jump. I still find it incredible that you agreed to work alongside them. Irina commented, moving her feet happily on one of the pews of the church that had been vandalized long ago. As I said before, a deal is a deal. Zenobia clarified seriously, eating the noodles calmly. Besides, I must admit that the Security's help will come in handy. The exorcist looked up from her, narrowing her eyes seriously. When we attacked him, he was moving so fast that we couldn't even see his movement. In fact, it seemed like he was using some kind of magic to get our attacks through him. It was impressive. Do you think that will be enough to defeat Kakabiel? Irina asked, starting to eat with her friend. I don't know. I'm sure the Security used all of his power against us, but I can't say the same for Kakabiel. Zenobia replied, looking intently at her noodles. For that reason, we must not trust each other. Yeah? Irina exclaimed, raising her hand with joy. Zenobia started to stir her noodles, remembering the talk she had with Issei. To be more specific, she remembered the very noble goal that she had mentioned. Do you know something? Irina looked at her friend with great intrigue after hearing her tone of voice. After what your childhood friend told me, he makes me believe that the disappearance of the demonic corruption are not mere rumors. She concluded, with a small smile on her face. No demon would want to defend innocent people. You think so too? Irina exclaimed with a big smile on her face, being answered by a nod from Zenobia. Line jump. Have we all met yet? Riaz asked with his typical smile, seeing that his servants and the exorcists were sitting on the chairs, while all the Sonin nobility was at the entrance together with the aforementioned. The only one missing from the meeting was Kiba. What do you think if we organize the plans and don't waste any more time? Zenobia asked, clearly uncomfortable being surrounded by so many devils. Luckily for her, she'd had to share a place with the only demon she'd liked so far. She is right. Issei nodded. Kakabiel is already in the city. We don't know if he could attack in a week or today. There's no need to be so uptight. Riaz clarified with a nervous smile. We already discussed everything with Sona. We know what roles each one will have in the fight. Considering that the academy is our territory headquarters, Kakabiel will attack this place without a doubt. Sona stated seriously. The plan is for me and my peerage to create a powerful shield so that no one can teleport from the inside out, and vice versa. I get it. That way, the enemies won't be able to escape. Zenobia said. But are you well aware of the risks involved? Of course. Sona adjusted her glasses. If the situation becomes critical, I will remove the spell and call the Mayu and my sister. And why not do it now? Zenobia asked, narrowing her eyes in great suspicion. We would save ourselves a lot of trouble. What do the details matter? Riaz answered her, making Zenobia look at her carefully. You lost the previous bet, so you don't have the right to question anything. Riaz put her hand to her face, giving a small sigh. If you want to know the answer so badly, Serziches and Serafel are too busy to attend to a problem like this. The tension began to be felt in the air, making Issei swallow hard. After Zenobia and Riaz were staring at each other, the exorcist finally relented and closed her eyes. I guess you're right. It's not my concern what the demons do. Oh, more, what they don't do. A small mocking smile shot onto Zenobia's face after her last words. I think you have a lot of experience with it. Akeno declared, covering her mouth to hide her typical smile. After all, they have completely failed to recover the Excalibur fragments. Can we focus, please? Issei got up from her seat with a big jump, cutting off the heavy atmosphere that was being generated in the small room. You're right, Issei. Ria sighed. This is no time for silly discussions. She clarified with great seriousness. Listen well. As we already know, Kakabiel is in league with that freed guy and the creator of the Holy Sword Project, Galilei. The latter won't be a problem, but Freed is something else. He will use the already unified Excalibur fragments to fight, and that will be a big problem for the devils. Riaz looked at Zenobia and Irina. For that reason, I want you two to lead the attack on him while we take care of Kakabiel. I'll also take care of Freed and Galilei. Everyone looked towards the entrance in surprise after hearing a familiar voice. Kiba. Issei exclaimed with joy after seeing her partner again at the club after several days. I'm glad you're back, Kiba. Kaneko commented with a small smile, something out of the ordinary for her. Issei. Issei looked at him expectantly at the mention of him. At first, I was angry with you for denying me the chance to destroy 2 fragments of the Excalibur. But then I thought about it with a colder mind, and I think you're right. Kiba tightly clenched his fists. The best option is this. Very good, Kiba. Riaz cleared her throat of her, causing the blonde to look at her with a bit of pity. President, he said, not even being able to look at her face. Don't worry. We can fix our misunderstanding later. Riaz clarified, causing Kiba to look up from her in genuine surprise. Then, you two will fight alongside the exorcists. Yeah. She responded without delaying more than a second, kneeling down to show him respect. Issei could only smirk seeing that the team seemed to be back. Issei. Yeah. The protagonist immediately turned his attention to his mistress after hearing her call. You will be the most important in the operation. Ria's words caught him a bit off guard. We will support you, you have to kill. Riaz could not finish issuing his orders since a huge tremor occurred in the club. What the hell is going on? Saji exclaimed after almost falling over due to the huge tremor in the place. It's here. Sona declared with absolute seriousness, making everyone stand up from their seats and grab their respective weapons. You know the plan, let's go. Ordered Riaz, receiving a nod from everyone. Line jump. Bakabiel was sitting on top of Kuo Academy, waiting for his potential victims while tapping on the roof with his fingers, indicating his impatience. After waiting for several seconds, a big Machiavellian smile appeared on his face when he saw how Riaz appeared running from the Academy's garden, along with his entourage. You finally show up. Kakabiel declared with his smile still valid. I was beginning to get impatient on this long night. Bakabiel. Riaz exclaimed, looking towards the top of the academy. Bakabiel's smile twisted into a serious look when he noticed something strange. Wait a minute, the fallen angel searched his gaze. Where is the brat Citri? I can still feel her energy around this place. The answer fell instantly as a huge violet-colored barrier completely covered the entire academy, causing Kakabiel to take a small surprise. I see, he said seriously, and then a creepy smile appeared on his face. So, some mere reincarnated devils and the bratty Grimoire think they can beat me? He asked himself, laughing at them. It's the least I could expect. After all, the Grimoire is a spoiled brat who has no idea of the power I possess. But I didn't expect that from the Citri, since she had a reputation for being more or less intelligent. Kakabiel thought with a mocking smile. Sure, she's runny, she must have convinced her. Kakabiel thought, fixing his gaze on Riaz. After all, they both live in a bubble. I'll be very amused when they deeply regret not calling their brothers from the beginning. Kakabiel raised his hand, making a small snap with his fingers. But for now, I think I can have some fun. Riaz and his entourage watched as 2 figures made an appearance after Kakabiel's snap. Oh? Freed was the first to speak, fixing his gaze on Issei. Long time no see. How have you been, you fucking demon? Freed asked, with his typical psycho smile. Did they teleport in with the barrier? No, they're already at the academy before. Thought Riaz, slightly serious his gaze. I wonder if he's hiding something else. We will be your opponents. Zenobia, Irina, and Kiba stepped forward, pointing their respective swords at him. Oh, I see. Freed exclaimed, waving his sword like a moron. The 3 of you want a rematch? They can come at the same time, I don't care. The result will be the same. Declared the deranged exorcist, making his sword shine with great intensity. The only thing I ask of you is that you don't get in my way. Kiba declared, taking a step forward. That should say me. Zenobia replied, imitating the blonde's action. By the power of the church and by the power of God, you will be punished for your crimes. Irina exclaimed, joining the duo. That remains to be seen, whore. Freed yelled, disappearing from the place like the other 3, starting their fight. Bakabiel lowered to the ground, causing the remaining people to look at the cadre cautiously. The fallen angel looked up from him, denoting an evil smile on his face. A smile that had to be slaked with blood. Do you think they'll be able to make it? Saji asked, being able to keep the barrier active with some difficulty. The only thing we can do is trust them. Sona declared solemnly. I guess the numbers don't favor you too much, Kakabiel. Rhea sneered, crossing her arms with a smile. Numbers? Do you think I would need more allies to kill vermin like you? Kakabiel asked, laughing at Rhea's baseless confidence. But you're right. A sinister smile graced the cadre's face. If we even up the numbers a bit, this will be a lot more fun and interesting. Rhea's blinked in disbelief at his words. What do you mean pair up? Kakabiel's smile intensified even more at the question. The cadre raised his hand to the front, creating 2 magic circles where 2 terrifying dogs with 3 large heads appeared. Summon Cerberos from the 12 gates of hell, Rhea exclaimed in complete disbelief. Only ultimate class devils are supposed to have access to the inner abyss of hell. Ah ha ha. Kakabiel laughed out loud. That's right. Killing that wimpy demon in the Great War at the end was of any use to him. He exclaimed with a sadistic smile on his face. One of the Cerberi went in the direction where Fried was fighting, causing the fight to be interrupted. Thanks, I really needed a little hand, boss. The exorcist exclaimed with a mad smile on his face. How annoying. Zenobia whispered under her breath. Irina, take care of the damn dog. Okay. The exorcist exclaimed with a big smile on her face. I guess there's no other choice, Rhea said to herself. Issei, we'll take care of the Cerberus. Okay. Issei took a big leap, sliding behind the Cerberus with ease. Oh? Kakabiel put a hand to his chin with a smile. Do you have that much trust in this guy? I'll make sure to subdue him until he gives up, President. Issei exclaimed, putting the gauntlet in front of her face to emphasize her words. The reddish energy completely surrounded him, indicating that he had been accumulating a large amount of augments without anyone noticing. Issei, this is not a raiding game. Rhea yelled at him, dodging an attack from the Cerberus. This is a real enemy, you can't risk it. You have to kill him. Hearing those words, Issei's eyes widened. Kill him? That gauntlet, Kakabiel thought aloud in amazement. I see, it wasn't just rumors, he concluded, making a huge sick smile appear on her face. This could be much more interesting than I imagined from the beginning. Partner, this is not the time to hesitate. Drake exclaimed, releasing Issei from her internal fight. Why yes, Issei's answer only made Drake worry even more. If he continues with those human thoughts, this won't end well, Drake thought, gritting his teeth. Let's see what you're made of, wielder of Drake. Kakabiel commented, crossing his arms. But before we start, I'd like to make you a proposition. Issei looked at him with great curiosity. I can let you live after our fight if you agree to join me. Kakabiel raised both of his hands with a big toothy grin. What do you say? In addition to having exciting and unforgettable battles every day, I also promise you all the women you want. Do not be ridiculous. As? Kakabiel looked genuinely surprised. Hardly anyone dared to insult him. Do you think I'm going to abandon my classmates and friends just to save my butt? Issei's question sounded more like a threat, causing Kakabiel to look at him in astonishment. Ha 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 ha. Kakabiel laughed out loud at the unexpected attitude of his opponent. Very interesting. Kakabiel got into a fighting stance. A serious expression graced his face for the first time. So let's get started. Issei tightly clenched both of his fists, trembling slightly. What the hell are you doing, partner? Use balance breaker. Drake yelled in his mind. No, first I want to see if it's necessary, maybe I can come to my senses with him. Damn. There is no way to reason with a guy who is blinded and obsessed by bloodshed. Don't be naive. Drake tried to make him reason, but his words were of no avail. Issei quickly charged at the cadre with various kicks and punches. The fallen angel was able to block each of them with great ease. His serious look turned to a disappointed one, thinking that he had expected too much from the guy in front of him. You don't even make me sweat, Kakabiel commented, blocking all the attacks without breaking a sweat. Are you really the securite? The cadre sneered, clearly disappointed in the demonstration he was receiving from Issei. Be quiet. It was the only thing Issei could say, trying to hit him in vain. Kakabiel was having it easier, he even took the trouble to look away from him to Fried to see how his fight was going. Stop moving so much, you fucking bitch. Fried yelled, attempting to slash Zenobia with the Excalibur fragments that had been assembled. Without a doubt, combat is made much more difficult with the Excalibur's abilities combined. He declared the exorcist, doing a backflip, then rolling on the ground to dodge various lashes, finally jumping up to clash his sword with Fried's. It would be a big problem if she was fighting alone. She finished with a smirk. Fried gritted his teeth as Kiba appeared from behind him, hoping to end the match by splitting him in half with his demon sword. Seeing this, Kakabiel caught Issei's fist as he blocked it. Following that, the protagonist punched him with all his might in the abdomen that did not flinch the cadre, causing Issei to widen her eyes in disbelief. Kakabiel raised her hand to where Kiba was, creating a small magic circle that began to materialize a strong ball of golden energy. Kiba, watch out. Issei yelled, intending to get in the way of the attack, but since Kakabiel was grabbing him, it was impossible for him. The attack went off in less than a second, creating a huge explosion on the spot. Fried and Zenobia flew out of the dust, but they hadn't taken any damage. After a few seconds, the dust completely dissipated, seeing that there was a crater of considerable size, where Kiba seemed to be fairly well. Or so it seemed, since he was standing with light scratches on his body. His sword was missing, apparently. That cockroach, Kakabiel said with a smile. He just deflected the path of his sword to block the attack. He survived by a miracle. Kiba wiped the sweat from his face while trying to control his erratic breathing. I heard that an experimental subject managed to escape. Kiba looked up from him, clenching his teeth tightly. And of all things, he became a demon. Galilei commented, approaching the weakened Kiba. I have to say that I am grateful, because thanks to you my goal was achieved. Did it come true? Kiba asked, not understanding what he meant. The holy will that the experimental subjects had was not enough for a holy sword. Galilei raised his finger to emphasize his next words. Then, I came to a conclusion. I just had to divert that subject's will. He clarified with a sadistic expression on his face. Hearing this, Kiba couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. And I did that, crystallizing it. Galilei removed a small blue crystal from his pocket. This is the crystallized holy will of that moment. Kiba looked at the stone with a frozen expression. And now this is the last one left. Fried laughed out loud, getting up from the floor. Except me, all the bodies broke and died trying to integrate the crystal into their souls. Fried raised the Excalibur with great pride. When you look at it like this, you'll see that I'm really super special. That's what someone puts on when performing the ritual to use a holy sword, Zenobia thought, remembering that she and Irina had to use it. Those hypocrites tried to get rid of me while shamelessly taking the results of my research. Galilei explained with a maniacal grin on his face. Now they try to divert the holy will without killing the subjects. I conclude, laughing. That means there was no need for us to die back then. Kiba declared, getting fully to his feet as he glared at him with great hatred. Because? You were just experimental material. Galilei shrugged. We had to get rid of you once the objective was achieved. We always believed it was a just death. Kiba clenched his fists tightly, trembling with hatred. We were just disposable materials. Kiba wondered, unable to believe everything he was hearing. Galilei threw the stone at his feet. You can keep it if you want. He commented with complete confidence. We are capable of mass-producing something much more refined than that. Kiba grabbed the crystal as a melancholy look crossed his face. Please. Leave us and run. The voices of his friends came like a painful memory to his mind, causing him to squeeze the glass tightly with both hands. How could he have done something so cruel? Issei wondered out loud, not being able to believe what she was hearing. This is the supernatural world, brat. Kakabiel's words made Issei look at him. It is normal for misfortune to persecute the weakest. All of us. Kiba squeezed the crystal even harder, causing it to start to glow. We die. Kiba started to mumble, his face remaining obscured by his hair. Didn't you listen? Fried asked with a psychotic smile. You died in vain. He yelled with great joy, causing Kiba's body to start trembling greatly. Do you want me to repeat it to you again? The sadistic tone in his voice was unbearable. His maniacal laughter was cut off instantly when he saw something strange about the blonde. The blue aura began to change into a black one, expanding around Kiba. Hate. You hate it. Kill him. Destroy it. Finish it. Tear it to pieces. Don't leave anything of him. Voices began to haunt Kiba's head, making the hatred in his heart intensify even more, increasing the black aura that was surrounding him. Galilei watched all this with wide-eyed eyes. He couldn't understand what was happening. Kiba opened his hand slightly, revealing that the blue crystal slowly began to turn black. When the darkness took over the crystal completely, the darkness that was around Kiba entered his body and the crystal shattered into pieces. It doesn't matter that you are in league with a cadre. Vengeance will be mine. Kiba fixed his gaze on Galilei, making the old man take a step back, startled. Doesn't that remind you of something, Issei? Drake's words made the protagonist listen to his mind. It's the same as when you got your balance breaker. The only thing different is that you got it through goodwill. Kakabiel looked at the blonde with crossed arms. I'll make sure. Kiba materialized a completely black sword which contained a thin golden line down the center. To avenge them. It's all of them. It's us. Kiba pointed his sword at Galilei, intending to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Free. Galilei yelled with great fear, being instantly attended to by the aforementioned, getting in the way of Kiba. Kiba, smash the Excalibur. Issei's scream made Kiba look at him. Show that your balance breaker is stronger than that cursed sword. Show that your will is stronger. Issei exclaimed with great confidence. Kiba looked towards his enemy, flashing a small murderous smile. Of course my will is strong. Otherwise, I would never have gotten here. If I hadn't had a strong will, I would never have sold my soul to the devil. The blonde thought, increasing his smile a little more. Everything, to savor this moment. Of course you will, Kiba. Riaz declared, releasing a great power through a magic circle that finished destroying Cerberus at last. You are the knight of the Gremory clan. A holy sword like Excalibur is nothing to you. Kiba just nodded at his master's words. I guess my time to get serious has come as well, Zenobia commented, throwing the Excalibur shard at Kiba's feet, then taking out Durandal through a magic circle. That sword, Galilei yelled, taking a step back. Duranda? Cacabiel wondered with a smile. Interesting. He concluded, starting to get bored of blocking all of Issei's punches. Are you seriously going to use Durandal? Irina asked, dealing with the Cerberus with a bit of difficulty. It's better for me, so you end that fight quickly and help me finish off this rude dog. She concluded, dodging the bite of all three heads in one leap. Seeing this, Riaz and the rest of her decided to help her to finish off her less important enemies quickly. Thibault looked at the Excalibur shard seriously, then gave a slightly evil smile. Him breaking her into 1,000 pieces with his sword. That Fried yelled with great exaggeration, jumping back. There's one, he would say to himself, fixing his gaze on Fried. The deranged exorcist would glare at him with great rage, pointing his sword at him. Remember that your opponents are two. Zenobia commented, joining Kiba. Damn, Fried whispered seriously, then flashed his psychopathic smile as usual. It cuts them into 1,000 little pieces. I'm starting to get bored. Cacabiel exclaimed with great impatience, grabbing Issei's face with great force, making the young man cry out in pain. I can't believe that such an interesting guy is being the most boring in my last battle before the Second Holy War starts. Cacabiel threw him with great force to the ground. Issei clutched his head as she got up off the floor, watching as Cacabiel slowly approached him with a disgusted look on her face. What the hell are you doing, hide you, Issei? Zenobia yelled, cornering Fried with great ease thanks to his skill and sword. Use Balance Breaker once and for all. Balance Breaker? Cacabiel wondered with wide eyes. So, if you can be much stronger, the cadre broke into a huge smile. I see, don't you plan to use it? Cacabiel disappeared from Issei's sight, making the protagonist blink in disbelief at such speed. Shit. Am I seriously going to die for a fucking reincarnated devil and a whore? Fried yelled with great rage, being completely cornered by the two swordsmen. Just as Zenobia and Kiba jumped in to finish him off, the guy disappeared without a trace. That. Irina and those of the Riaz nobility shouted when they saw that the Cerberus had also disappeared. If you don't plan to use it, I guess I have no choice but to force you. Cacabiel's voice made everyone look up at him, seeing how Cacabiel was flying, noting for the first time his pair of wings. The other two were standing on top of magic circles, waiting for the show to start. And? Kiba started to fly in the direction of Galilei, intending to cut him into 1,000 pieces. You won't escape. Kiba, wait. Riaz shouted, but it was already too late. How naive, Cacabiel declared, raising both hands with a creepy smile on his face. When his hands reached the top, everything went into slow motion. A strong purple light completely covered the entire site. Kiba slowly widened his eyes in horror as a huge amount of purple magic circles covered the entire place. All the others reacted much the same way as the blonde, completely frozen by what they were seeing. Even the Citri nobility were completely speechless at what they witnessed. The blinding purple glow intensified even more, causing Cacabiel's smile to intensify even more. Before the purple glow completely blinded the place, it could be seen how Issei ran towards her companions in slow motion, while a red glow completely surrounded him. The last thing that could be seen was Irina throwing herself on top of Zenobia to protect her. After the entire site was decorated by a purple light, Cacabiel's next words were heard. Let the Second Great War begin. A huge crash was followed by a large amount of dust, dirt, and debris that covered the entire barrier. The magical barrier did not take a second longer to break, hearing numerous screams from the Citri nobility. Having nothing to contain it, all the destruction caused by the attack dispersed even beyond the area with great rapidity due to the magnitude of the attack, resembling a second burst. The sound of the numerous explosions finally subsided at the same time that the earth and the debris stopped advancing, falling to the ground. The consequence of that devastating attack was a huge curtain of dust that had left everyone completely blind if anyone had survived such an attack. After several seconds of silence, a red aura could be distinguished from the dust and debris. They're fine, Issei yelled loudly. His figure was slowly revealed, seeing himself with his crimson armor on, except for his helmet. Yeah. Riaz declared, seeing that her friends were also in perfect condition. You arrived just in time to defend us. I finish, trying to make out something among all the dust, just like the others. Issei remained with his arms open, ready to create another barrier over his companions if necessary. Look. Asia pointed, making everyone look in the direction. Everyone widened their eyes in shock when they could see the Kuo Academy had been completely destroyed, leaving only a few pillars and rubble scattered around the place. It didn't even take him a second to prepare the attack, Akeno said what everyone was thinking, unable to believe the rate of destruction he had caused. If it hadn't been for Issei, Kaneko stated, seeing how all around her was destruction. Shit, Kiba. Issei exclaimed, widening his eyes like he couldn't. A feeling of utter tranquility invaded his body when he could make out how Kiba emerged from the rubble of Kuo Academy. Though he quickly fell to his knees on the ground, gasping for air as a large number of grievous wounds graced his body. Hold in there. Issei shouted, with the intention of going to help him. Awesome. Kakabiel's voice made Issei stop instantly, looking in various directions. After much of the dust cleared, Issei and the others were able to watch as Kakabiel and his companions landed unscathed on the ground. This time it wasn't for the sword. Kakabiel crossed his arms, keeping a serious look. It's amazing that he could withstand the attack. A big sadistic smile flashed across his face after looking at Kiba's injuries. Although he managed to survive by sheer miracle. Arena. Everyone, without exception, shifted their gaze to Zenobia, who was screaming inconsolably. Issei's eyes slowly widened, opting for a completely transfixed, flabbergasted expression. Her eyes sparkled, reflecting the figure of how Zenobia tightly hugged the limp and bleeding body of her friend as tears ran down her face. Zenobia's broken gaze glared at Kakabiel's neutral face with great rage. Damned. She got up, carefully supporting her friend's body on the ground. God won't let you get away with it. She screamed loudly, grabbing Durandal off the ground. Boo. Kakabiel asked, wiping away a hate. Do you plan for a dead man to stop my plans? Zenobia widened her eyes in shock after hearing that. What did you say? Oops. I'm not supposed to say that. Kakabiel exclaimed, then covered his face and began to laugh out loud. But I'm starting another war, so it doesn't matter anymore. God died during the First Great War. Zenobia's eyes began to twitch at what she heard, slowly approaching madness. God, is he dead? Ria's widened her eyes as she couldn't after hearing what she heard. It can't be, you have to be lying. Zenobia's legs started to shake. But the death of God, pure angels cannot reproduce or be created. Pure devils and pure fallen angels are rare. Right. Kakabiel commented with a gloomy look on his face. Didn't you find it weird that the three factions started recruiting humans after the Great War? That's because all three of them stooped so low. Zenobia's legs increased in trembling of hers, falling to her knees on the ground. The angels and fallen angels who heard the news decided to keep a secret to protect all humans who believe in God. Lie. You lie. Zenobia declared, on the verge of fainting from all the mixed emotions. That doesn't matter now. Kakabiel stated, clearly annoyed. What really annoyed me is that because of the death of the demon lord and god, everyone decided to stop the Great Holy War. Kakabiel put her hand to his chest, taking it strongly. I can't take it. I can't. I need to kill. I need another war that lasts forever. I want to quench my endless bloodlust. Kakabiel's eyes filled with uncontrollable fury. All because of the idiot boss we have and the stupid woman who abandoned her bloodlust for killing a human girl. Fuck me. But the prayers he always received them, Zenobia stated, still trembling. HMPH. A small smile appeared on Kakabiel's face. Michael is doing great. It can't be. Zenobia slowly turned her face to Arena's body, making her eyes go dull. You died protecting a lie, those were her last words, as she fell completely fainted to the ground. I already understand it. Galilei exclaimed, raising both hands with a maniacal grin. That explains why the blonde brat can use a holy demonic sword. Indeed. Kakabiel agreed. It's obvious that his sword is tainted by demonic power, but it still has a small drop of holy power on it. They all seemed completely overwhelmed by the talk. Everyone except Issei. The protagonist cared little about the death of God. He still couldn't take in what had happened. She's dead. Issei continued to stare at her, his face expressionless. Why did he kill her? For pleasure? He asked himself. Does he dirty her spirit just for taste? Does this guy's taste equal life itself from her point of view? Issei slowly turned her face, fixing his gaze on his opponents. Who will be next to Seder taste? Are you listening to me, hey? Kakabiel yelled at Issei, giving a small sigh when he saw that he didn't answer. I guess my plan to make this more fun won't do. What's the point of using your balance breaker just to save your teammates? Kakabiel crossed his arms, completely indignant. Issei could only limit himself to watching him. His mind was not blank. His mind was completely saturated. There was a knot that he needed to break so that he could move. That knot was his morale. I'm tired of talking. Fried flashed a big murderous grin. It's time for me to pay you back, you fucking blonde. Riaz and the others widened their eyes in horror when they saw how Fried charged Akiba with a huge leap at full speed, using the power of the Excalibur. Akiba tried to get up but couldn't even materialize a sword. He could only watch as the Excalibur was a few meters from going through his head. He only expected the end. Do you think that without killing anyone, you will be able to protect your loved ones? Would you protect your ethics and morals, no matter if it destroys your life? Is there any value in someone who does not value the lives of others? When the sword was about to touch Kiba's face, Issei appeared out of nowhere on top of Fried, breaking his spine with one blow and destroying his entire body with just the impact, generating a huge crater on the ground. Issei raised his face while Fried's blood soaked into his face, glaring at Kakabiel. Kakabiel raised both eyebrows at what he had witnessed. One by one, they all opened their mouths in complete shock at what they had just witnessed. He killed him with one hit. He killed him. That's right, the memory of the talk with Tiamat had managed to break that knot completely. President. Saji shouted, coughing from the large amount of dust and dirt in the area. I'm fine. Sona appeared through the dust, shaking her clothes to shake off the dirt. The damage was minimal, the Citri commented, then looked towards the center of the fight with great seriousness. Although, I could not say for certain how they are where the attack was unleashed. Sona adjusted her glasses with a worried look. Most likely it was a critical hit. What do we do, Sona? Tsubaki appeared, being accompanied by the rest of the nobility. I'll call them out. Sona stated earnestly. It is obvious that Kakabiel's power is at a completely different level than we assumed. Sona narrowed her eyes. I knew the cadres shouldn't be a joke, they have that position for a reason. Sona blinked in utter amazement after hearing Ria's voice through the small red magic circle that appeared in her ear. Ria's? Sona asked, somewhat surprised that she didn't even have her voice a little shaken. I know what you're thinking, a huge grin broke out on Ria's face, fixing his gaze on Issei. He had just killed Fried a second ago, still glaring at Kakabiel. I'm asking you to give us 10 more minutes. Sona looked up at the sky, then let out a huge sigh. I hope I don't regret this. Chapter 16. Until the last breath, Dragon vs Cadre. Kakabiel's surprised look changed to a completely serious expression, though a small smile could be discerned on his face. I think this is where the interesting part begins, Cadre stated quietly, signaling for his remaining Cerberus to attack. The Cerberus began sprinting towards its target with mind-boggling speed. Still, Issei waited for it to stand on Fried's body without making a move. The center had opened its mouth as wide as possible to eat him. When one of its teeth was about to touch Issei's head, the young man blinked and his expression became extremely serious. The beast slammed into Issei like a bull, dragging its target a couple of meters until it stopped dead in its tracks after a few seconds of the onslaught. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw that when the dust cleared, Issei was holding the Cerberus back with a one-handed grip on one of its teeth. Ah. Issei didn't hesitate for a second, throwing the beast into the sky with all his might with one hand, demonstrating brutal strength. When the monster had finally reached its maximum altitude, Issei extended his palm towards the sky, only to have a small crimson orb appear in his hand. Dragon shot. The large crimson energy shot like a bolt of lightning towards the Cerberus, causing its body to completely disappear due to the magnitude of the attack. Interesting. Shouted Kakabiel with a large maniacal grin on his face as he extended both his hands out in front of him. Let's see how you do with two. He shouted again, extending a huge purple magic circle from the ground, causing 2 Cerberus to emerge, which didn't take a second to rush out towards Issei. Seeing this, the protagonist frowned and proceeded to materialize his helmet as a precaution. Both Cerberus rushed at Issei to tear him apart, but he created 2 magical barriers just a second before, causing the beasts to make a full impact and fall to the ground stunned. Issei took advantage of this and unraveled his barriers, rushing forward while extending both arms out to his sides. He opened his fists, denoting a small crimson orb in both hands. Dragon shot. Braig's voice again echoed through the place, unleashing 2 massive blasts of power that completely eradicated the Cerberus. Galilei took a step back as Issei disappeared out of nowhere and reappeared in front of him, but it was too late to react. The young man punched him with a strong punch that went all the way through his stomach. Galilei's eyes widened in horror, and he spat out a huge amount of blood, only to be blown away by the force of the attack. Kakabiel watched indifferently as Galilei's body rolled and fell behind him. How much power, the cadre thought seriously. Were you so eager to fight to the death? Issei shouted, dematerializing his helmet. So. Issei took a great leap and aimed at him with a great firmness in his hand, not caring that he was several meters away. Now don't run away like a coward. Dragon shot. The attack began to advance from the sky towards Kakabiel with promising speed, but very easy for the cadre to dodge. Kakabiel watched as the magical attack slowly approached his figure and he responded with a simple motion. He crossed his arms. Just as it was about to hit him, he could see the fallen angel smirk sideways. The attack slammed hard into its target, causing a huge blizzard to blow through the place. The dragon shot exploded a second time with great energy, creating a huge sphere of crimson that gave off pure magic. What? Issei blinked in shock. The attack was supposed to have shattered the ground. It shouldn't have had that effect. The chestnut thought with great seriousness, keeping a great distance in the air to make sure he didn't have any unpleasant surprises. The dragon shot's shockwave spread out a little further, creating another final mini-explosion, causing the impact site to be covered in dirt and dust. Did it work? Issei thought, staring at the impact zone. The protagonist was able to catch a pure miracle as something approached towards his position, thanks to the dust and dirt making a strange movement. Issei crossed his arms in X by pure instinct, just the second Kakabiel appeared in front of him, without a scratch. Issei managed to cover himself from the punch and then tried to kick him, but Kakabiel dodged it without much trouble. Thus, a barrage of punches and kicks began to unfold in the air. Both opponents blocked and countered, without managing to land a blow on their opponent. The speed was such that their spectators could barely follow them with their eyes. That amount of power is not enough. Drake exclaimed seriously. You need to increase your power. And how do I do that? Issei exclaimed, finding it increasingly difficult to block Kakabiel's attacks due to the fact that he was slowly increasing his strength. I'm already using all my power. It's time, Ria said quietly, creating a magic circle where black energy with a crimson edge began to create itself. Ria's? Akeno asked with great surprise. You cannot use the power of destruction. Remember that your brother forbade it due to the little control you possess over it. Akeno turned her gaze back into the fight, frowning. Besides, Issei will most likely get hurt as well. Never mind that. Rias replied, opting for a completely nonchalant look. The important thing is to stop it. Then we'll cure Haidu with a phoenix tear. Akeno gave a sigh, but decided not to say anything about it. Rias narrowed his eyes with great conviction, unleashing a powerful attack that made a horrifying sound when it was released. Hearing the sound, Kakabiel looked in the direction of the attack. He swiftly kicked Issei hard, causing the young man to blink in shock at the cadre's inordinate increase in speed. After knocking Issei to the ground, Kakabiel turned around and met the Grimory's attack with a strong kick, deflecting it into the sky practically in a second. When she did, you could see that her shoe was completely shattered, as were her toes, which completely disappeared just from coming into contact with the highly condensed energy. What? Cried Rias in complete disbelief, only to be visibly startled when Kakabiel appeared in front of her out of nowhere. Listen to me well, Grimory brat. Kakabiel declared with an aura of death around her. The next time you intervene in my combat, I will kill you. He concluded, causing Rias to shiver at the cold, shadowy look the cadre gave him. Kakabiel quickly turned around, using his forearm to cover Issei's blow. After that, they both leapt backwards and began clashing punches and kicks again, with the difference that they were now on the ground. Another major difference was that Issei was no longer fighting back, he was only defending himself. Shit, I can't go on much longer. Issei thought, gritting his teeth hard as he noticed that his block was gradually being shattered by Kakabiel's strength. To increase your power through augmentations, you have to use your emotions. Drake shouted in his mind. Bear in mind that your mind is like a dragon's, so your emotions are 10 times stronger. You have to find some negative thought to help you expel your full potential. A negative feeling. Issei's mind was filled with negative memories. His relationship with his parents. His poor ability to integrate into society. Being known as the weakest Sekiryuite. He even thought of the most recent of all. The death of Irina, his childhood friend. With all that, it should have been more than enough. After all, her heart was covered in bad feelings right now. Why isn't it working? Drake thought, gritting his teeth tightly. With such negative energy, there's supposed to be an explosion of power. All my previous carriers have always been run on anger and hate. Ah ha 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 ha. Kakabiel laughed loudly, not letting Issei rest for a second. I had thought that a human with sacred gear with his power barely awakened would have been very boring. But I see I was completely wrong. A grim smile graced his face. Luckily, those stupid demons were watching you the whole time and ended up reviving you. Hearing this, Issei blinked in complete shock. How do you know? The protagonist felt his skin slowly begin to bristle with uncontrollable hatred. How do I know? The sadistic, horrified grin on Kakabiel's face grew even wider. Who do you think ordered your death? He shouted with great sadism and finally broke through Issei's defense, creating a spear of light to pierce through his skull. In those moments, total darkness adorned Issei's heart. Everything around him became dark and inaudible. He closed his eyes, remembering Rainer's last words to him. My boss ordered me to kill you. Kakabiel rolled the spear over his hand, heading at a great speed towards Issei's face. Boost. Bakabiel widened his eyes in disbelief as his spear of light was completely destroyed by Issei's hand. The protagonist dematerialized his helmet, fixing his gaze on Bakabiel with uncontainable rage. From one second to the next, the fight took a 180-degree turn, courtesy of Issei, who began to lash out with extremely strong punches. Bakabiel could only step back, while his arms remained in an X shape to cover his opponent's first 5 hard blows that forced him to retreat. Still, his block was not enough in the face of such force. Bakabiel was covered by a side kick that went straight to his cheek, forcing him to widen his eyes in astonishment as he felt that the blow carried so much power that it overwhelmed him completely. That ended up in him going flying from the inertia of the kick, rolling several meters backwards on the ground. Bakabiel looked up from the ground, staring at Issei's big attack with great surprise. In the protagonist's hand, a large red orb could be seen covering his entire hand. The attack emanated a somewhat screeching and threatening sound. "Are you sure about this, partner?" Drake asked, then gritted his teeth slightly. "Just a raise." He thought there should have been a hell of a lot more. There's no choice but to use plan B. Issei pointed towards Bakabiel. "I know it's very risky, but it's the only way to win." "I agree, partner," Drake declared earnestly. "Take that." Issei shouted loudly, throwing the attack. Dragon shot. The attack came off Issei's hand with abysmal power. The magnitude of the attack was so great that it shattered the ground where he was standing. The attack advanced towards its target, generating a huge line of destruction in its path that wiped out everything it touched. "It's much bigger and more powerful than the last one," Bakabiel thought, seeing that the length of the attack was so great that it was impossible for him to dodge it, considering that he still had to get up from the ground. Bakabiel buried both hands in the ground, creating a huge purple magic circle, where 3 Cerberus came out in front of him. The cadre rose from the ground, watching as the 3 creatures were completely devoured by the attack, creating a cloud of blood and dust in front of him. When he thought the attack was finally over, Bakabiel widened his eyes, completely shocked. "Another one," cadre exclaimed, watching as another dragon shot of the same strength as the previous one pierced through the thick curtain of blood and dirt. Bakabiel didn't take a second to respond, bringing both hands forward to create a barrier. The attack hit the barrier hard, creating a huge crater at Bakabiel's feet, along with the sound of a deafening bang as the 2 forces came into contact. The attack seemed to be very powerful, but it was visible that the cadre wasn't having much trouble holding it back. Just as Issei's attack was about to fade, Bakabiel was once again taken by surprise as he could see a shadow swoop down from above him. The cadre raised his gaze to the sky in complete amazement, watching as Issei was flying a few feet away from him, having another very strong dragon shot at the ready. Bakabiel moved one of his hands to where Issei was, causing a magic circle to materialize, summoning a Cerberus that swallowed Issei in one bite. Just when she thought the problem had been solved, Bakabiel's eyes widened in shock. Dragon shot. The powerful attack went through the Cerberus's head with no problem, going straight towards Bakabiel, creating a huge shockwave from the explosion. Issei was thrown several meters away by the power of the attack, rolling on the ground without stopping for a few seconds, until he was finally left lying in the rubble of the academy. The protagonist looked up, seeing how the attack was expanding like a sphere, only to explode with great force, causing everyone to be covered by the enormous amount of dust and dirt that was shot out. Issei slowly stood up, trying to look around in vain, as the dust would not allow him to do so. Finally, his armor shattered into 1,000 pieces, causing him to fall to his knees while breathing heavily. "You've used up a lot of magic in one go, partner. You won't be able to fight for the day," Drake declared with great seriousness. "What do you say, Drake?" Issei commented with a faint smile on his face. "I can still continue." Issei materialized his gauntlet, only to cry out loudly as he felt his entire hand receive a sharp painful spasm, breaking the gauntlet in the process. "That's what I meant," Drake clarified, a worried tone in his voice. "You haven't suffered from it until now, but having a dragon's arm has many consequences." Issei continued to breathe heavily, trying to catch his breath. Instead of recovering, though, he felt more and more dizzy. Unfortunately, his troubles didn't end there. Issei blinked in shock when Bakabiel appeared out of nowhere, grabbing him tightly by the neck and burying him in the ground, creating a small crater. The fallen angel wasted no time, stomping down hard on both of his arms, then burying a spear of light into his stomach, completely immobilizing him. Issei couldn't help but vomit up a large amount of blood as he felt an excruciating pain hovering in his stomach and spreading throughout his body. Issei could only stare at Bakabiel helplessly, seeing that the previous attack had only given him a couple of scratches and faint burns all over his body. "That hurt, Sekiryuite," Bakabiel commented. From his tone of voice, it was clearly more of a compliment than a threat. "It's been a lot of fun, but I see you can't entertain me anymore," he concluded, looking around to try and visualize something amidst the dust. "Listen to me well, this will be your last chance." You can decide to join me, and I promise I will kill all your companions before the dust dissipates. That way, you won't have to see them. A smile appeared on Issei's face as he spat blood on his opponent's badly damaged foot. Fuck you. Kakebiel watched the spit in silence, then closed her eyes deeply. I see, that's a pity. Kakebiel fixed her gaze on Issei's face, denoting an expression that indicated suffering. In that case, suffer as you watch all your friends die in front of your eyes. He finished, turning around, walking away at a slow pace to find his victims. Issei clenched his fists tightly, then let out a heavy sigh. I guess I have no choice. Issei looked down at his right hand, only to have a feeling of despair begin to blossom in his heart. Wait a minute, how do I go about summoning her if I can't use what little remaining magic I have left? The answer came immediately, as all the dust dissipated seemingly out of nowhere, causing Kakebiel to look in all directions in clear surprise. Issei blinked in shock as a guy in white armor landed in front of him. The protagonist tried to raise his gaze to look at the guy, but it was useless due to the fact that he was still pinned to the ground. I can't believe it. Kakebiel stated with clear emotion in his words, turning around to look at the subject with a big bloodthirsty grin on his face. Of all the guys, I was expecting anyone but the Albion Bear. Upon hearing that name, Issei couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. The energy of the man in front of him began to seep into his body, causing a completely irrational fear to take over his body. Without a doubt, this guy was his ultimate rival, his ultimate enemy. This made the fear move easily through his whole body, flooding him with that feeling. Beautiful deep blue eyes opened with great seriousness. Being so focused on the subject, Issei didn't notice that the seal on his hand appeared and began to glow a light blue color. Are you so eager to do crazy things, Kakebiel? Asked a teenager who seemed to be of a similar age to Issei because of his voice. The subject raised his hand, preparing a small magic circle of a faint light blue color, more akin to white. I guess the fun is far from over. Kakebiel commented, moving into an attack stance. The cadre blinked in complete surprise as the hacker Yuiku deflected his attack towards the spear that held Issei captive, freeing him from his prison. The blonde. The man spoke, fixing his gaze on Asia, who stood several feet away. Take him away. I don't want her to die before our fight. Why yes. Asia quickly complied with the order, not even thinking to question the subject. Easy, Issei. Asia brought her hands to her companion's abdomen with great seriousness. I will heal you. She commented with conviction. Thank you, Asia. Issei commented with a somewhat weakened tone, but he was still fully conscious. That guy, Issei thought, fixing his gaze on the hacker Yuiku. He's coming to help us. That's surprising. Riaz thought, watching Issei with great attention. After being pierced by a light attack, he can still be conscious. Thank you for saving me, Issei. Kiba arrived along with the others, noticing an improvement in his condition thanks to Asia. No problem, Kiba. The protagonist commented with a smile. By the way, Issei Akeno called out to him with great intrigue, fixing her gaze on Issei's hand. Why is your hand glowing? What? Issei looked down at his hand, seeing how the light blue seal was glowing brightly. What? He shouted, making absolutely everyone look at him like he was an idiot. What's wrong with him? The hacker Yuku wondered. No idea. Kakebiel bowed his shoulders. Anyway, going about our business. He added with a mischievous grin on his face. Apparently you don't want Azazel to give you a second chance, the hacker Yuiku would state with a sigh, completely digging in. I guess I'll have to drag you away by force. Oh, Kakebiel scoffed. Try it if you can. He concluded with a big grin, getting into an attack stance. I can tell you have no idea, scoffed the hacker Yuiku, getting into a defensive stance. Kakebiel quickly lashed out at him. How slow, thought the hacker Yuiku amusedly, watching as Kakebiel was only a meter away. But just before the fight was about to begin, Kakebiel stopped dead in his tracks, raising his gaze to the sky. The hacker Yuiku mimicked the cadre's action. What the fuck is that? Kakebiel asked, seeing how a huge magic circle of a pure sky blue color had risen above their heads. Whose magic circle is that? Sona asked, arriving at the combat zone along with her peerage. Saji could be seen carrying the fainting Zenobia in his hands. She's coming. The demons watched Issei with great anticipation, waiting for the answer. But there was no need for him to respond. The blurry celestial figure took off at an absurdly high speed from the magic circle, falling to the ground and creating a huge cloud of dust in the process. Riaz and the others became alert, watching the place with great attention. A huge vigorous grin could be seen amidst the dust along with long, silky, light blue hair. Out of nowhere, Kakebiel and the hacker Yuiku flew out of the dust curtain, crashing heavily into the rubble of the academy. Again, a light blue blur could be seen running at full speed towards the hacker Yuiku, which was pulling itself together. The figure took a huge leap, landing right on top of the boy with a kick that created a huge shockwave around him, completely shattering the guy's armor and revealing his albino face, only to be buried again in the rubble by the utterly ridiculous force of the blow. Again, another curtain of dust was created on the spot, along with a small crater. "What the hell?" shouted Riaz, trying to visualize the figure as he covered his face from the strong wind current that had been generated by the previous attack. The dust finally began to dissipate, watching as the figure clearly of a woman began to slowly advance towards them. This brought everyone to alertness as a cold sweat broke out all over their faces. At last a real fight. The figure finally came into view, revealing Tiamat with a sweet smile on her face. "It's great that you were able to fight these two guys, Issei." The dragoness finished, pointing at the protagonist with a smile so cute it was impossible to imitate. Everyone brought their gaze to Issei with wide eyes, waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, Issei he couldn't help but blush and look away after seeing the unexpected huge smile that the dragoness gave him. At last a real fight. The figure finally came into view, revealing Tiamat with a sweet smile on her face. "It's great that you were able to fight against these two guys, Issei." The dragoness finished, pointing at the protagonist with a smile so cute it was impossible to imitate. Everyone brought their gaze to Issei with wide eyes, waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, Issei he couldn't help but blush and look away after seeing the unexpected huge smile that the dragoness gave him. Seeing Issei's reaction, Tiamat closed her eyes with great joy. "I can finally move my hips a little after so long," she exclaimed, doing a little dance with her waist rather charmingly. "Wait a minute." Riaz began to slowly widen her eyes to the point where they seemed to pop out of her face. "That hair color, that shape." It can't be hearing these words, Issei couldn't help but look at her with both eyebrows raised. He quickly realized that it wasn't only her having that reaction, as the older Citri and Gremory classmates were also reacting the same way. "Have you met her yet?" Issei asked her mistress, looking at her with great curiosity. "Why are you with Issei?" Riaz pointed at the dragoness, completely ignoring Issei's question. Hearing this, the dragoness stopped her beautiful dance she was using as a stretch to look at Riaz with slight surprise at her question. "Because he is my light dragon," replied the dragoness, pointing at him with a beautiful smile. She then brought one of her hands to her chest to emphasize her next words. "Because he illuminated my world." Tiamat gave a small jump, stepping down from the rubble, beginning to slowly approach towards them. "I was completely out of spirits until he appeared," she explained in a melodious voice. "Suddenly my life changed. It's a drug, all these feelings. And like such a seductive glow, it fills me with life." She concluded, putting both hands on her chest with a big smile while making a very tender gesture, indicating that she really felt very comfortable together with Issei. "Issei?" Riaz exclaimed with great indignation, thinking things that were not. "What?" Issei asked, raising an eyebrow at her mistress's outburst. So everyone immediately looked at Tiamat after hearing a cheerful but dark tone. Her gaze was shadowed with a small smile. "If you guys try anything." Tiamat's smile disappeared completely just before she vanished and reappeared next to Riaz, causing the president to startle a little. "If you guys hurt him," she whispered in her ear, a distinctly cold and unscrupulous tone. "I will see to the extermination of your entire wretched species." She concluded, spitting a large amount of venom as her voice that even seemed to be visible. Riaz widened her eyes in great fear after such a dangerous threat from the dragoness, causing her body to tremble slightly. At last, Tiamat clapped her hands, separating from Riaz with a cute smile on her face. "You've done a good job, Issei. But leave the rest to me," the dragoness declared, receiving a nod from the boy. Tiamat turned around, fixing her gaze on her two victims. "This has got to be a joke." The albino wiped the blood from his lips, fixing his gaze on Tiamat. "What is she doing with Drake's carrier? Specifically her, of all women. This is completely unreal," Kakabiel stated as he spat out a large amount of blood angrily, holding her stomach from the large kick he received from the dragoness. "Many tried, but no one compares to the best ice user you will find in the world. Beware if you run into the Ice Queen, for she will make you disappear," Kadre thought, reciting a prayer he had read long ago. Well, Tiamat began to slowly advance towards them with a big smile on her face. "Let's see what my dear student was up against." The albino materialized his armor instantly as he saw her approach, while Kakabiel's entire posture visibly tensed. It was a rather curious reaction, considering they were about 30 meters apart. "Issei Tiamat is your familiar?" Riaz asked, unable to believe her eyes. "Yes, wait, I don't remember mentioning her name to you." The protagonist fixed his gaze on his mistress with great attention. "So, did they know each other?" "Do you know who she is?" Riaz asked, looking at him with wide eyes. "My best friend and my mistress." Issei pointed at himself in confusion, unable to understand the question. "Brage should have told you about the Dragon Kings." Sona commented, causing Issei to look at her with great surprise. Wait, you're telling me what? Issei fixed his gaze on Tiamat in great astonishment. There are 2 dragon kings alive. Sona fixed her gaze on Tiamat, watching as slowly an icy atmosphere was forming around her for every step she took. One is a man, who is in hell. The other is a woman, who had few appearances these past 1,000 years. The strongest dragon queen of the 4 Tiamat. Sona looked at Issei in slight amazement. But I still can't understand how she intervened without you calling for her. Issei rubbed her hair with a smile. It just so happens that our connection isn't like that of a familiar. Let's just say it's more special. Issei pointed to his hand, causing the light blue seal to glow brightly on his hand. She can sense everything I feel through this connection, and vice versa. She can also know where I am when she wants to know, and so she can always come to my aid when I am in danger. Issei rubbed his cheek innocently. The only weakness the seal has is that since it's a connection that relies on that, if they destroy the seal, they destroy the connection. Hearing this, Riaz and Sona couldn't help but listen to it with utmost attention. From what Tiamat told me, the only way to break the seal is to cut off my arm. I see Riaz nodded with a hand on her chin. It's certainly something very interesting. Tiamat continued to advance with great patience towards her enemies, summoning her sword as the ground began to freeze, along with a large dense fog of ice completely surrounding her. Some wanted to see that ice melt, but it has frozen every step at its destination. Their footsteps leave icy footprints on the road. They're going to feel that cold until they give up. Did anyone think they can against the Ice Queen? That person freezes when he feels her approach. Recited Riaz, watching as the Dragoness froze everything in her path, even the air itself didn't stand a chance. Wait, if she's the strongest among the Dragon Kings, that means Issei fixed his gaze on the Dragoness, completely in shock from all the information received. He was simply having a hard time taking it in. Tiamat is the 3rd most powerful entity in the world. Issei wondered, feeling Tiamat's aura begin to make his body heavy from the sheer hostility and power it presented. Tiamat let her sword touch the ground, generating a small cut in the ice as she continued to move forward. Well, her smile widened tremendously from 1 second to the next. That was fast. The albino gritted his teeth tightly. His arms were crossed in an X shape in a poor attempt to defend himself. The Dragoness shattered his armor again with the dull part of her sword, creating a huge crater in the ground. Let's begin. Tiamat exclaimed with great joy, embedding the albino deeper and deeper into the crater. Tiamat's stance quickly became unsteady, deflecting Kakabiel's punches with great ease. She quickly spun 360 degrees as if she were a princess, deflecting the albino's punch with great ease. She made a couple more turns, causing her sword to impact against the guy's armor, forcing him to defend himself. Finally, she took a small leap and hit him with the blunt end of her sword in the helmet, shattering it completely. The subject's face moved in slow motion after the blow, seeing that the impact had moved all the fat from his face, even though he didn't have a speck of it. Kakabiel quickly got behind the Ice Queen's back with the intention of cutting her with his spear. Tiamat continued to spin gleefully as she hummed, blocking Kakabiel's attack and destroying his spear in the process. The albino tried to take advantage of the situation and attempted to attack her again from behind, but Tiamat moved to the side with a masterful step, causing the albino to almost fall to the ground. Following that, Tiamat twisted her body in a 90-degree angle, dodging another dangerous cut from the cadre, showing off her flexibility and impressive reflexes. She brought her sword to the back of her head in an absurdly fast movement, blocking a punch from the albino with great ease. The attack had been so strong that it generated a huge blizzard, along with a small crater in the ground. Tiamat took advantage of the same inertia of the punch to use it to her advantage, making her fly away from the blow, spinning in the air with much glamour, to finally land on her feet with great style. Tiamat jumped quickly, dodging a kick from the albino. The guy couldn't even react as he received a hard kick to the face that again shattered his helmet, sending him rolling to the ground. "Gotcha!" shouted Kakabiel, thrusting his spear into Tiamat's lung. The fallen angel blinked in complete shock when he saw that Tiamat's sword had appeared in the path without him noticing, blocking the attack with great ease. "Thank you for getting close," Tiamat exclaimed, turning around at a speed that didn't even give Cadre time to think about fleeing, receiving a hard kick to the stomach. The attack generated a small shockwave around Kakabiel, plus the dragon's foot had sunk completely into Kakabiel's abdomen. The cadre widened its eyes in horror, vomiting a massive amount of blood before flying away. "I can see why you've been in so much trouble." Tiamat turned, handing Issei a smile. "After this, we'll focus on improving your magic reserves." The Dragoness commented, seeing that the energy of the gauntlet was slowly making its presence known. "You must be very careful with it. Listen to me carefully, Bali." The gauntlet of the now recognized Bali spoke. "It is an enemy that we cannot win against. We have to retreat." "What do you say, Albion?" Vali asked, standing up as he wiped the blood from his face. I don't plan on withdrawing from a fight. Especially if I'm still a long way from using my full power. He stated with some confidence in his words. Hearing this, a rather dangerous smile appeared on Tiamat's face. Apparently, she had something planned. Hey, Issei, could you watch my sword for me? The dragoness asked, tossing the sword towards the protagonist's position. Woo-woo-woo. Issei shouted as the sword stuck in the ground next to him as it had generated a sizable crater in his position. She's going to fight without the sword. Kakabiel exclaimed, rising from the ground as he glared at her angrily. Are you telling me I'm not worth it? The dangerous smile again appeared on Tiamat's face. You know something? Tiamat positioned both hands on her hips. To make things easier, I won't fly during the entire fight. Tiamat clenched her fists tightly. I hope you are prepared for the second round. She declared, getting into a marathon pose and then taking off at a tremendous speed. Because I'm more than ready. Don't underestimate me. Shouted Kakabiel in a great rage, taking to the sky. She's mine. Vali exclaimed, stepping in front of Tiamat, trying to punch her. Thank you for. Tiamat propped her foot on top of Vali's arm, then stomped on her helmet with her other foot. The support. Tiamat leapt with overwhelming force, causing Vali to be embedded in the ground without even being able to respond to such speed and strength. Tiamat soared through the air with great skill, standing right in front of Kakabiel, who had prepared a huge spear of light. Die. The cadre shouted with great sadism, hurling his giant spear. Tiamat caught the tip of the spear between his two fingers, only to have it explode into 1,000 pieces. You fell. The cadre shouted again, thrusting a spear into the side of her abdomen. How did you? Kakabiel blinked in complete shock as the spear shattered into 1,000 pieces upon contact with Tiamat's skin. Kakabiel had no time to react as Tiamat grabbed him by the neck with brutal force, causing the cadre to spit out a massive amount of blood. Ai-ained. Tiamat sang in a sweet voice, descending at tremendous speed with Kakabiel ahead of her. Down. A huge crater was generated on the spot, along with a heavy blizzard and the sound of a blast that forced everyone to cover their faces for a second. Though Tiamat let go of Kakabiel's neck when she saw that his eyes were completely blank. I broke his windpipe, he died. Explained the dragoness in an innocent voice that didn't match at all with the coldness with which she said it. Issei was watching this in the same position as before, not realizing that all her companions had moved away from the area as a precaution. Ag. Issei exclaimed in pain, seeing his gauntlet being activated without his permission. This is the side effect I'm talking about, Drag. I feel like my arm is being permanently burned. Thought the protagonist, looking at the gauntlet with clear pain in his expression. Issei. Tiamat looked at him quickly with a worried gesture. You used too much energy all at once. Tiamat extended her hand towards him with a warm smile. I need to treat you now, before the energy continues to consume you. Issei was about to go to his side, but stopped abruptly. Tiamat, watch out. Vali could be visualized flying through the air, throwing a large amount of magic balls towards Tiamat. All of the balls hit the dragoness in the back, generating a small curtain of dust that began to dissipate immediately. Tiamat hummed, looking over her shoulders with a smile. Can you still stand? Tiamat turned around with a huge grin on her face. In that case, let's keep having fun for a while longer. She exclaimed, starting to run towards a nearby pillar. I'm sure he had been hit, Vali thought, gritting his teeth. If 10 didn't do anything to him, let's see if triple the amount will have the same result. He concluded, causing a huge amount of magic circles to appear behind him. Tiamat continued running at an enormous speed, dodging all the magical attacks just before they could impact her body. Vali watched with great surprise as Tiamat came out of the explosions without a scratch. Finally, 4 balls impacted in the same place, generating a large smokescreen due to the explosion. I got her. Vali clenched her fist tightly as she thought she had hit him. Tiamat came out of the smokescreen without a scratch, taking a big leap towards the pillar to then start running horizontally, as if he were Spider-Man himself. When she reached the top, she took a huge leap that completely destroyed the pillar, reaching the top of Vali in less than a second. The albino blinked in complete disbelief when he ran into her head-on. He didn't even have time to react, he could only receive a strong blow from Tiamat's forearm in his neck, which shattered his helmet completely and made him spit a small amount of blood. Both fell to the ground as if they were a missile, generating a huge roar in the place, causing Issei to fall to the ground due to his current low resistance. Issei tried to stand up, but the gauntlet glowed hotly, causing the protagonist to clench his teeth tightly from the huge sting and finally fell to the ground completely unconscious. That's bad. Tiamat got up from on top of Vali, who seemed to be unconscious, seeing Issei's state. If I don't cure him now, the energy will continue to consume him and he will be unconscious for several days. Thought the dragoness. The always smiling and cheerful expression had already changed to normal because of what she was witnessing. When the dragoness took a small step, she saw a magic circle come into existence on the spot, from it coming out sursages. The supreme demon could not help but be stunned by the condition of the battlefield, but he was even more impressed when he saw Tiamat on the spot. The dragoness fixed her gaze on the demon, and Sursages immediately felt a murderous craving alert every fiber of his body, no matter that he was several meters away. She had probably reacted that way, since she was near Issei's unconscious body, although that was more than clear that it had only been a coincidence. The figure jumped up behind the dragoness, intending to deliver a heavy blow to her face. Tiamat sensed the hostility immediately, turning around to parry the attack with her hand, catching the punch without trouble. That act sent her hair flying with intensity, and a small crater appeared at her feet. "Are you still conscious?" Tiamat wondered, somewhat impressed that the albino was so persistent. "Listen to me well, the fight is over. I went in a very good mood because it was my first battle after such a long time, that's why I thought of leaving you alive. Especially, being that you are Issei's ultimate rival, someone who can help him with his progress exponentially with just your mere existence." Tiamat tilted her head slightly to the side, widening her eyes in a gloomy manner. "But I'm beginning to reconsider the option of leaving you alive." Bali couldn't help but widen his eyes in complete surprise. What's up with that change of attitude? He thought. Listen to me carefully. I didn't do anything to Drake's carrier. I was only coming on Azazel's orders to take me to Kakabiel for his crimes. The albino clarified at last. So you had nothing to do with his current state, Tiamat glared at him, causing the albino to feel something cold penetrate his face. Then disappear. Kakabiel is already dead. I never run away from a fight. The albino declared with great pride in his words. I haven't even used all my power. All your power? HMP. Tiamat sneered. Suddenly, the armor on Vali's fist shattered completely due to Tiamat's grip, causing the albino to start screaming in pain. If we both used our full power, what do you think the result would be? Tiamat continued to squeeze, causing Vali to fall to his knees, as the bones in his hand could be heard beginning to crack. The crater began to create itself at the feet of both of them that grew larger and larger, only because of Tiamat's strength. The dragoness let go out of nowhere, causing the albino to look down at her kneeling on the ground, being humiliated by the smile of grandeur that Tiamat gave off for looking down at him from above. Sorry brat, but you don't come close to beating even my shadow. Vali could only lower his gaze and clench his teeth tightly at such a statement. Those words from Tiamat only made him feel even more humiliated than he already was, if that was possible. Tiamat again fixed her gaze on Sursages, causing the supreme demon to take a step back out of pure instinct. Tiamat suddenly appeared in front of Issei's body, taking him in her arms very gently and lovingly. Don't worry, whispered the dragoness with a very tender tone. I'll take care of you. Brother. Shouted Riaz, returning to the battlefield with everyone else, seeing that the white-haired fellow had disappeared from the scene along with Kakabiel's corpse. Riaz. Sursages exclaimed earnestly. Is everyone all right? Yes. Riaz declared with a smile. Asia watched as Issei was being carried by Tiamat, so she began to approach. Let me heal. Don't get close. Don't touch him. Tiamat ordered in a rather cold tone, taking a couple of steps backwards. Asia quickly took a big leap backwards when she felt her life was in danger. What happened to her cute attitude? Thought the blonde, as a big cold sweat ran down her face because of the pressure the dragoness was exerting. Hey, I think we can talk this over more calmly. You know, talk in a better way. Sursages made his point with a clear nervous smile on his face at the situation. Not in 1,000 years did he expect this. If you want, I'll freeze you, that I notice you that way better. Tiamat's threat made Sursages himself take a step back in fear. What is this? Sursages thought, watching as an icy aura surrounded Tiamat that stirred around him an impressive pressure and hostility. Why do I feel like we're all going to die if anyone steps forward? He wondered again, watching as some sort of imaginary aura outlined a large circle that represented an instant freeze if anyone stepped into it. Tiamat sat in the huge circle of ice that was created around her, gently resting Issei's head on her thighs as she took her affected arm carefully, then proceeded to freeze the gauntlet completely. Her hand remained in contact with the gauntlet as some red particles came out of the gauntlet. The dragoness used her free hand to caress the protagonist's cheek with much affection while waiting for his awakening. At this warm action, she couldn't help but smile a little smile. Only Issei could bring out her smiles. Line jump. I'm a perfect pillow, Issei murmured between dreams with a very satisfied smile on his face. He unconsciously moved his hands underneath the pillow to get even more comfortable. Awesome, it feels even better from underneath. Issei moved his hands underneath, causing his laughing expression to transform into a small grimace. For a pillow it's pretty warm. Issei tried to rearrange his face better, bumping headfirst into something. Huh? Issei opened his eyes, seeing that his nose was pressed against someone's abdomen. Does that mean? Issei slowly raised his gaze innocently, watching as Tiamat's slightly flushed face peeked over the top of her two large attributes. Hhhh. Issei practically jerked away from Tiamat with great shock, a little embarrassed at touching the Dragoness's bottom so much without her consent. Tiamat looked at him with slight surprise after his reaction, making Issei more nervous. It's not my fault you're so padded and warm. He tried to defend himself by making strange gestures with his hands, further muddying the situation. Tiamat's surprise turned into a huge amazed smile, so that she then hugged him very tightly, putting the protagonist's face above her breasts with great joy. I'm so glad you're already so energetic. Issei could only roll his eyes after such an action from the Dragoness. Apparently, she only changes her ways when she's together with Issei. Surziches commented with a hand on her chin, then looked at her sister. You said they were best friends and she was his mistress. Does that mean there's no other kind of relationship? Not that I know of. Issei made it pretty clear to me. Riaz replied, remembering Issei's different reactions and his responses. Still, of all the possibilities, Surziches thought with wide eyes. The enmity of Tiamat and the Drake Bearers was mind-boggling. Why now did it change so drastically? Surziches lowered his head, narrowing his eyes. It's obvious that the option of killing her is completely out of the question. The good thing is that the two of them don't seem to have any kind of romantic relationship. They are simply very close. By the way, Mao Sona tilted her head slightly, causing the aforementioned to pay special attention to her. How did you find out about the situation? I'm sure none of my royalty or Riaz called you. Hearing this, everyone did nothing but stare at Sona in astonishment. Are you kidding me? Surziches raised an eyebrow at such a stupid question. The main building of the academy exploded into 1,000 pieces a few minutes ago. It wasn't going to take me that long to figure it out. Seeing that Albion's carrier has already awakened, Tiamat hummed with a cute smile while caressing Issei's head that was still resting on her body. Out of nowhere, her beautiful smile changed to a rather dark smile. We'll have to increase the intensity of the training a lot. Hearing this, Issei's whole body had a big shiver that didn't feel pleasant at all. His face turned purple as he imagined even more intense training than he was already doing now. Are you okay? Tiamat blinked with great innocence after seeing Issei's reaction. Perfectly. The boy exclaimed, pulling away from Tiamat with a big toothy grin as a rather unreal glow surrounded his body, causing the Dragoness to shake her head in amusement. Issei's energy didn't last long as a strong dizziness overpowered him completely, causing his face to fall into Tiamat's chest again. Now that I'm done with the adrenaline rush of your first real fight, I guess you're feeling all the side effects in full. Tiamat commented, carrying him in her arms with great gentleness as she lifted herself off the ground. Even with me at your side, you'll need a day to recover. Having a dragon's arm is no joke, you know. Tiamat explained with great concern in her eyes. I feel very tired. Issei began to close his eyes slowly, resting his head on Tiamat's breasts to use them as a pillow. I just want to sleep, he continued. His somewhat dull eyes widened a bit after looking off in one direction, though it didn't take long for them to close. I see, Tiamat thought, glancing in the direction where Issei watched. I figured the first time something like this might happen, she concluded, fixing her gaze on Irina's corpse. Tiamat fixed her gaze on the demons with great seriousness. I took Issei to his house. Don't come to disturb him for at least 2 days. Declared the Dragoness with a tone that clearly indicated she was not for jokes. Wait. Surziches shouted before Tiamat disappeared, causing the Dragoness to give him a sidelong glance. I have an offer for you. I'm not interested in vermin offers. The Dragoness declared with great seriousness, causing Surziches to break out in a sweat. Do you want to be around Issei any longer? A small smile appeared on Surzich's face as he saw that he caught Tiamat's full attention. What are you planning, brother? Thought Riaz, looking at the Supreme Demon with great intrigue. Thanks for watching this video. Part 6 is now over. If you like this video, please subscribe and like this video. I hope I see you in the next video.